as the company was getting bigger much faster than it was like the year previously. So we've transitioned more towards the buying versus building because it does give us the ability to get the same things that we were looking for in terms of the same software, the same features, and the same availability. So having client libraries that hook into our current backend libraries and also our current front end languages, where we could just purchase that, integrate it in, get what we were looking for, but then also be able to iterate on the features that make us different and will help us get ahead of our competitors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Hatchpad Insight. I'm Tim Winkler, the creator of Hatchpad, the community connecting progressive engineers with emerging startups. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe for updates on new Insight interviews like this one. Today, we are chatting with Mike Garrett, an engineering manager at MotoRefi, a fintech startup headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. Mike, thanks for hanging out with us at the Hatchpad.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Why don't we start with a quick intro about you and your background and how you got into your role at MotoRefi?
Sure. So I've been working in engineering in the DMV region in some capacity for the past decade, since 2009. Initially, I was working as a junior Java developer at the University of Maryland University College, which I think is renamed more recently to UMGC. I was working on the learning management system there. I learned a whole lot being in that role from a lot of senior developers. Transitioned into more of a back-end developer working for a government contractor and then also a really small startup, as in like me and one other person. So I learned a whole lot there about actually working, and you really can't hide behind someone else doing something for you, which helped me become a full stack developer. So around 2013, I started working for a DC-based startup company called New Brand Analytics. I was a full stack engineer there doing JavaScript and Scala on the back end. I eventually got promoted up to be the web applications team lead all the way through its acquisition. And then after that, a couple of other colleagues that also worked there with me, we went and joined Science Logic. So that's a network monitoring company that's in Reston, Virginia. So I was a part of the UI team there, building out their new UI initiative with several other React engineers, and we would build out React components there. I also led a small team of globally distributed engineers. So learned a lot about how to work across time zones and also how to work asynchronously to better work with the people that are on your team. After that, I spent a little more time just finishing up my degree. So I did a 1-year MBA program at Mount St. Mary's, finished that up last summer. So got that degree during this time. And then fast forward to today, I've been working for MotoRefi since October as an engineering manager for the internal efficiency team. Our goal is to make the people that we work with more efficient. So we build internal tools for our loan officers and business dev reps. We also work on just taking our current processes and making them more efficient so that we can handle the growth that we're sustaining right now.
Very cool. Excellent journey you've had there. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you all are building at MotoRefi? What is MotoRefi?
Sure. So MotoRefi is a curated marketplace where we it's designed to essentially save our customers money on their automotive loans through refinancing. So we typically save our customers $100 a month or like a 5% reduction APR, and they can use that money to help out their own budget, especially in times like this where every dollar counts. So specifically for our team, like I said, we build out tools for the loan officers. We also have two other teams that build out our underwriting product and also our consumer touch points. So getting our leads in through our affiliates and also getting them all through our pipeline, packaged up as lending, as funding packages, and then sending those over to our lenders.
Excellent. So why don't we jump into the meat and potatoes of the discussion here? And we wanted to talk to you today about the build versus buy debate, specifically within the software engineering ecosystem. I think at first, why don't you help our viewers just understand what you mean when you say build versus buy?
Yes, it's one of those debates that happens in software engineering, also, you know, in automotive talk. Like, do you want to build out your car versus buying an already built solution? But in the software sense, it's the difference between, you know, taking your engineering team, gathering requirements, specking out what a custom feature would be that your organization needs, and having them build it out versus finding a SaaS product or a company that has an already made solution that you can just purchase and then just configure to meet the same need.
And let's talk specifics to your experience with MotoRefi. I guess what approach did MotoRefi land on along the spectrum, and to what extent? For example, was it just a select few features, or just talk me through that process?
Yeah. So, before I joined MotoRefi, I didn't really think about it seriously, got thinking this hard-headed engineer. So I thought, if it was like a small feature or something that was very specialized, like charting software, for example, it made sense to go ahead and purchase that, or something that was really large scale or like foundational to your business, something like a CRM that also made sense. But it was that area in between where I was like, well, you've got a smart team that you've hired. Why not just use them to build out these things instead of purchasing something where it looks like it's very conceptually easy to understand from the outside? But as the company has grown, and as I've talked to smarter people than me that work at this company as well, I've switched my own thinking, my own mentality on it, to say it makes sense to find software that's already proven out, already existing and available, that you can quickly integrate, that your engineering team can quickly integrate, to help move the company forward much faster than they could have initially. And that's basically the name of the game, is speed. So for MotoRefi, the way that the company was working before, it was more of a build mentality. So our infrastructure more recently has been this Kubernetes infrastructure that we had almost maintained ourselves with Rancher, and having like a Postgres instance that exists in there as well that we were managing ourselves. But the process of having it and trying to maintain it was showing us it's like we were almost spreading ourselves too thin. We couldn't use the engineers that we had on staff to then go create these new features that we wanted to build and that we needed to build to keep up with the growth as the company was getting bigger much faster than it was like the year previously. So we've transitioned more towards the buying versus building, because it does give us the ability to get the same things that we were looking for in terms of the same software, the same features, and the same availability. So having client libraries that hook into our current backend libraries and also our current front end languages, where we could just purchase that, integrate it in, get what we were looking for, but then also be able to iterate on the features that make us different and will help us get ahead of our competitors.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm curious to know, as a leader, as a manager within the company, how many engineers are kind of reporting into you or underneath you within your team?
Yeah, in my team right now, we have 5 full-time engineers. We're looking to expand that out to 10 by the end of the first half of 2021.
Okay. And when you think about this concept of, say, getting them on board with this decision of we're going down to the path of buy versus build, how do you kind of, I guess, put the team at ease about that, or do you get their input before making a decision? Curious to know, how you engage your team on this. Are there circumstances where certain engineers maybe rubbed the wrong way if they really had this passion to build something that they had in mind, but you're going down this path of let's buy something instead?
Oh yeah, that definitely hits home. So we've gone through a couple products more recently where it would either replace an engineer building something out that they may have been passionate about or been thinking about because we've had it on our roadmap for a while. One of the ways we're thinking about them is that they're ways that we can quickly iterate on something. So there are a couple SaaS products out there where you're not paying for like a annual subscription, you're paying for it by month, and you can drop out at any time. So we use it as like a quick prototyping tool. For one example, we're looking at using like Retool, which is a software platform where you could drag and drop components into a canvas, hook it up to a couple data sources that you have, and then quickly build out an application in 2 hours, which is like their tagline. But it's something that we can use and integrate into our software development process to get the feedback from our stakeholders about where things should be, how things should operate and work before we use our engineering resources to actually build something out. So I'm sure more than a few of your listeners have experienced spending months building out something only to have it be scrapped or deemed obsolete because it wasn't what the customer asked for, or the customer has moved on by that point. So we didn't want to be in that same boat. So we were looking for solutions that allowed us to get something up, get it in front of our customer quickly to say, is this what you want? Is this how it should act before we spend our limited time building out something for them in our custom CRM.
So you mentioned speed as one of these main factors. What other factors play into your decision process here?
Yeah. So the other factors that play into it are, what do you get in return if you purchase this instead of build it? One of those things is that, you get all the features that you were looking for if you do your due diligence and look for the right one, plus more, because it's based on more than just your company's use case. You also get a maintained software that has continuous updates, and that you don't have to do them. It just comes for free as they've done their own work. And then you also get it faster. So you don't have to put it on your roadmap. You don't have to build out a PM plan to get it integrated into the features that you have decided to build for this current year. It's something you can purchase, acquire, integrate into your solution. It's just there, and you are then free to do more things to push your company forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's helpful feedback for the listeners out there. And let's just talk through the pro tips from your perspective, recommending to another engineering leader that's placed in this scenario of build versus buy. Any pro tips you recommend that they can expect along the way?
Sure. So our VP of engineering, Mike Spainhour, he helped me think about what's the best way of posing the question to yourself to make the decision a little easier. So he said, the cost is justifiable. Like if we purchased solution from X company, is the benefits enough to replace one full-time engineer or two full-time engineers? And is the cost less than one full-time engineer or two full-time engineers? If yes, then it's worth it, because instead of having to hire someone to take that role to work on your DevOps or to work on some feature toggling library, you just pay for it with the same money and you get it instantly. So that would be one tip, is to just pose that question to yourself as you're going through your own feature backlog to say, could we move more quickly if we chose to buy it from this company versus hire for the same skill set? The other thing is, think about like the NPM model. So if you're familiar with NPM packages, uh, you essentially, NPM install whatever you're looking for. So if you need like a logging library that interacts with the browser and gives you like the warn and error levels already built in, you just NPM install it and it's just there. And it's just installing these small packages that they may not, be this world beating, all inclusive like CRM or ERP system, but they do one thing really well, really focused for you. And you just include it and then it's done. That's same thing as at the Unix model with your aux and your greps. You got small focused packages that are tested outside of you, but you're still allowed to use them, that help progress whatever task you're doing more quickly than if you decided you're going to write the code yourself. You keep those two things in mind. I think the decision becomes much more clear and it's easier to grok as you go forward.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So what's the total size of MotoRefi from a headcount perspective?
Yeah. So total size now, I believe we're up to 180. We keep adding more and more people every day. It's it's I love the different touch points. So like when I started in October, I think we had like 120 like 15 people back then. And we all fit in like a Zoom meeting. So we do like our company meetings where we all fit there. And then at one point, it was saying that like it locked a couple of people out because it reached our limit on the license. Oh no, we've gotten so big we can't fit anymore. So then we had to up that a little bit more. So as the company keeps growing, we keep finding like little things like this where it worked in the startup land. It worked for the companies that we were plugging into for a certain size, like 25, 30 people, up to 100 people. But now we've gotten even bigger. So I'm excited to see where we'll be in 12 months from now.
Are there certain areas that you would lean build versus buy depending on the size of the company that you're at from a headcount perspective? Talk me through how this might differ from different stages of a startup's growth.
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of these SaaS products offer a free tier, which allow companies that are really small, 0 to 25 people, to get the same benefits as the product without having to pay for it. I think in almost all of those cases, it makes sense to just integrate in those pieces into their platform. So things that would take a focused engineering team to build out correctly and to do so without bugs, things like authentication, things like your like logging mechanisms that aggregate them together. That's something where you can just integrate a low tiered, free tiered SaaS solution, get all those benefits, and then allow you to create the competitive advantage that your company has and use your engineers to build that out. As you get to a larger size, closer to where we are, we're basically on that cusp of like, the higher tier things that cost a good chunk of change versus like the enterprise solutions, which cost way too much. Those are the ones where the decision is a little harder to make just because you're needing to understand like, okay, if we go ahead and acquire this tool from this company, is it going to give us enough benefit to justify it in a year from now? It's not just a throwaway cost or a cost that you can bury in a big budget that you've allocated X amount of dollars for engineering. It's something that makes a tangible difference to how far we can push the company forward within the next year. That size, it makes a little bit more of a difference. I think once you get above like the 250 towards like the 500 head count, then it's a little easier to justify bringing in some of those larger platforms that are more well known, and it still makes more sense then to almost buy those as well.
Let's go ahead and pivot the discussion now to an area that we like to touch on with technical leaders like yourself. And this is more geared towards the topic of career growth for our viewers. The question that we had for you was, what would you say are the top 2 traits that you look for in a technologist that's looking to work with a startup?
I think the top 2 traits when it comes to a technologist, engineer, someone working with the engineering department, one would be being like a software generalist, someone who's more of a Renaissance man or Renaissance woman. So understanding more of the underlying concepts of the most popular frameworks. So not just, being really hyper focused on being a React developer or Angular developer or anything like that, but understanding the concept of like effective state management or writing code at the appropriate abstraction level. Those things transcend languages and whatever popular framework exists at the time. And all you have to do is then learn the syntax for the new library or language, and then you're on your way. I think if I staked my career on being a CoffeeScript expert and did nothing else, I would be hard pressed to find a job right now. So the second one, which I think is almost more important, is just having curiosity. So you'll meet several types of developers in your career as you go along. Some are more cautious, some are reckless, but there's someone in the middle who we call curious. So those are the ones where you've got something going wrong in the company, or you've got like an unexpected bug and people are running around trying to fix it. And you want to be that person that one understands your domain and the software well enough that you can give a good idea about how to fix it. But then you also ask the secondary question of why did that break? And is there something I can do to fix that going forward in the future? It's those people that help a startup company go from just maintaining software to building out something much bigger and can corner a market. So I'll try to give an example. Let's say you're building out software, you're having problems with like the app servers going down. The cautious developer could find a way to spin up a third app server if you only had two, and that will keep the problem fine for a while. The curious developer should think about, why did it fail? Because we didn't have auto scaling in place, or because we didn't build out resilient software in the first place. So then taking that concept and then putting it back into the software, so that that's a problem that doesn't happen anymore. And if you don't have to deal with it anymore, then that frees you up to build out more features, which you can then push the company forward. Or you can take that same idea and say, we built out something, specific software that is more resilient to problems, and going forward, and turn that into a separate product that can be spun off and then sold elsewhere, generating an additional revenue stream for the company. That's something that the other class of engineers wouldn't have even thought of or brought to the table. So I say, try to remain curious as you go forward into your companies.
No, it's super helpful. That's great intel. And then let's just wrap up with the second trait that you would recommend to technologists looking to work with a startup.
Oh, yeah. So the second one, which I think is also almost more important, is just having curiosity. So you'll meet several types of developers in your career as you go along. Some are more cautious, some are reckless, but there's someone in the middle who we call curious. So those are the ones where you've got something going wrong in the company, or you've got like an unexpected bug, and people are running around trying to fix it, and you want to be that person that, one, understands your domain and the software well enough that you can give a good idea about how to fix it, but then you also ask the secondary question of, why did that break, and is there something I can do to fix that going forward in the future? It's those people that help a startup company go from just a company that's maintaining software, to building out something that can and be much bigger and can corner a market. So let's say I'll try to give an example. Let's say you're building out software. You're having problems with like the app servers going down. The cautious developer could find a way to spin up a third app server if you only had two, and that will keep the problem fine for a while. The curious developer should think about, why did it fail? Because we didn't have auto scaling in place, or because we didn't build out resilient software in the first place. So then taking that concept and then putting it back into the software, so that that's a problem that doesn't happen anymore. And if you don't have to deal with it anymore, then that frees you up to build out more features, which you can then push the company forward. Or you can take that same idea and say, we built out something, specific software that is more resilient to problems, and going forward, and turn that into a separate product that can be spun off and then sold elsewhere, generating an additional revenue stream for the company. That's something that the other class of engineers wouldn't have even thought of or brought to the table. So I say, try to remain curious as you go forward into your companies.
That's great. So be more of a generalist and be curious.
That's right.
Two traits. Excellent. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Super helpful information. I'm sure all of our viewers really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was great talking to you too.